Well, hello there, and welcome to day 39 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And we are truly into the Oscar bait season. So today I watched The Trial of the Chicago 7. Just to unpack what I said, at this point, traditionally, we would be well into the point in which I believe the Oscars would have nominees and the BAFTA nominees would traditionally have been announced by now. And every year for over the last, I want to say 7 or 8 years, I have made it a goal to try and clear the nominations of the big five. That traditionally is Best Film, Leading Actor, Leading Actress, Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress, and then potentially throw in Best Director for good measure. And what I often then found is I covered the gamut over a lot of the other categories, and more often than not ended up seeing a large swathe of those Oscar-nominated films, and again, BAFTA-nominated films. I tried to make sure I covered both the sort of Hollywood spectrum and the British film spectrum. With everything going on as it is right now, both ceremonies have been moved, and consequently the nominations have yet to be announced. Additionally, the films that would traditionally be on projected to be on those lists are a lot harder to predict because we don't have cinematic releases. So where I'm basing my decision on speculative articles, lists that are sort of charting sort of the films that somewhat come under the category that voters tend to like in these film organisations. So this is very speculative, and I've already seen films that have been mentioned quite extensively, like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, even Midnight Sky. Although, as I said at the time, I'm really not feeling that. But it can be. I definitely could say with confidence that Aaron Sorkin and The Trial of the Chicago 7 will be considered under that barometer, because I mean I've been following Aaron Sorkin's work for as long as I've been writing or presenting film reviews. Although with a quick research, I've actually discovered the shocking fact that I've only seen 3 of his films, which were The Social Network, Steve Jobs, and now The Trial of the Chicago 7. But even in those films, I can see that I think that you jump 10, 20 years time and people will look at Aaron Sorkin scripts and study them in schools. Not even the films, the scripts alone. I've talked quite extensively in other episodes about the power of a strong script outside of the film itself. I discussed it in when I was looking at the Merowitz stories, and when I mentioned Uncut Gems, and in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And I believe at the time, in both those cases, I mentioned Aaron Sorkin in passing, because where something like Uncut Gems really is a mastery of setting the scene and creating this intensive dialogue, or the Merowitz story is a great indication of the ability for people to talk over each other, and yet you should still get a great sense of personality. Aaron Sorkin is the perfect constructed dialogue scenes. The back and forth of characters feels so well timed, so well paced that you could set your clock to it. And I think if you were to look at an Aaron Sorkin script and see the process from him writing it through to him directing it, which he did in this case, both writing and directing duties, I think you would see a mastery of language, of character, of dialogue. The trial of the Chicago 7 is based around the historical trial of 8 men, as it transpires, who were charged with inciting riots in protest of the Vietnam War. I believe in a previous video I said that I am not an American, I've never been to America, and my knowledge of American history is happenstance. And so I don't know how well the trial of the Chicago 7 is remembered in American history, whether it's something that's common knowledge. But as far as I was concerned, this was new. This was something I'd never heard of before, and I was learning about as I watched the film. And so I don't know the line between the fictional presentation of it and the real historical event. And this is something else that Aaron Sorkin is very good at doing, is he is very good at walking the line between the seriousness of subject matters and of politics. He spent nearly a decade writing The West Wing, and there's something almost comedic as well in his sensibility. Now, I've never seen anyone ever accuse Aaron Sorkin's films of ever being, as people like to refer to, comedy dramas, but there is something witty and very satirical in his work, where people just say these very sharp, cracking lines that are perfect. They're both biting, funny, but also cut to the core of meaning. And I think, again, that shows his abilities as a writer and as a director. Whereas with my previous experiences with Aaron Sorkin, where I was thinking of Steve Jobs, there's something very theatrical about the structuring of Steve Jobs. This, even though it is set primarily in the courtroom, the film introduces each of the 8 defendants, and after that, as like an epilogue, and then after that we spend the entirety of the film in the courtroom, and yet there is something not theatrical about it. There is something, he manages to expand it in a cinematic sense so that you really feel the atmosphere of Chicago of the time and the America of the time and the political landscape and the social landscape. And as I said, it doesn't feel like you're watching them on a stage just because they're in one location. It really does feel cinematic, and I think, again, that shows the expansiveness of telling a story like this. It would be easy to say that the politics of the sort of Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War and the post-Vietnam War, the relevance is historical as opposed to current. But the way that this film portrays politics, portrays the tense relationship between the public, the protesters, as in the general public who are not protesting, the general public that are protesting, the political protesters, the government and the police, the relevance now, and particularly considering the last few months that we've observed in the news, is prescient and meaningful in a way that I can't even imagine Aaron Sorkin could have possibly predicted, considering the release date of this film. But there is something universal in it. That transcends really the time period in which it's set, the relevance of it being made now, and I think you could watch it in 10 years and it would still have meaning that is relevant, to do with motivations, to do with the question of who is the bad guy and who is the good guy, and sort of deconstructing that to the point when you realise there are no good and bad people, there are just simply people with motivations. And even the people who we are against in this film, who we stand against, we understand what has brought them to their motivations. And I think there is something deeply human and incredibly powerful about boiling down heavy, complex politics down to the effect it has on the everyday person. And I think that's partly the writing, partly the directing, but also the performances. Sacha Baron Cohen is at his A game, and I don't want to say this is the best performance I've seen of his, because I have seen several that I'm sure I would put up there, but I do think this performance, in a serious role, is fantastic. I think Eddie Redmayne is fantastic. Even Frank Langella, who plays the judge, is phenomenal as this practically clown court judge who takes himself incredibly seriously, and yet people keep very much drawing attention to how ludicrous his rulings are, and dismissals of evidence or witnesses, or and the political motivations that he never states, and yet are in the subtext of his of his judgments. This is genuinely a very powerful film. As I said a few weeks ago, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was easily the best film I'd seen of this year and of this series. But The Trial of the Chicago 7 really does give it a run for its money. It's on par. It really is on par. And I don't envy the decision when it comes down to nominations and then the actual winners, because these two films are two of the best films I've seen. As I said, I'm not American, and yet I became engaged in the politics of the film. I was engaged in the emotionality of it, and I cared about people in a way that, considering that this is historical and it's a completely foreign politics, and yet I cared about the consequences and the actions and the brutality and the racism and the really difficult subjects that people want to explore using, films like this. So this is definitely a strong recommend. That goes without saying. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.